The cashier's face went white as she scanned item after item, and every single one came back declined. My daughter-in-law's $847 cart, frozen. My son's $200 worth of gifts, rejected. And there I stood, 20 feet away, holding my phone and the banking app that controlled every penny they were spending. My name is Carol, and before I tell you what happened that December afternoon at Nordstrom, I need to know something. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city and state in the comments because what I'm about to share happened in my hometown of Scottsdale, Arizona. And I have a feeling women all across this country have dealt with the same kind of family betrayal I experienced. This is my story, and every word of it is true. I want you to picture Christmas 2023. The mall was decorated with those enormous red bows and white lights everywhere. Christmas music floating through the stores, families laughing, shopping together, getting ready for the holidays. It should have been magical. It should have been joyful. Instead, it became the day I finally understood exactly what my family thought of me. Let me back up 6 months. My husband Richard died in June of that year. 43 years of marriage, gone in a moment. Heart attack, sudden and cruel. We'd been planning our retirement travels, talking about finally seeing Alaska. Then one Tuesday morning, he was gone. Richard had been our family's financial wizard. He ran a successful medical equipment supply business for 30 years. Smart with money, always planning ahead, always making sure we were secure. What my son, Brandon, and his wife, Tiffany, didn't know was that in the last 5 years of Richard's life, he'd made me a full partner in everything. Every account, every investment, every business decision. Carol, he'd said during one of our evening walks, if something happens to me, I need to know you can handle everything. Not just survive, but truly manage it all. So he taught me. Banking, investments, business operations, everything. By the time he passed, I could navigate our financial world as well as he could. But here's what happened after the funeral. Brandon, our only child, sat me down at my kitchen table about 2 weeks after we buried his father. Tiffany was there too, her perfectly manicured nails drumming on the table. They had this look on their faces, concerned, serious, the kind of look you give someone you think can't handle their own life. "Mom," Brandon started, "Tiffany and I have been talking. We're worried about you managing everything alone. The house, the bills, all of Dad's business affairs. That's a lot for one person." I remember stirring my tea, letting him continue. "We think it might be easier if we helped manage things. Maybe we could move some accounts around, make things simpler for you. You shouldn't have to stress about money at your age." At my age, I was 67. My mind was sharp, as it had ever been. But they looked at me like I was fragile, like I was already fading into some helpless version of myself. Tiffany jumped in, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of, Carol. Brandon and I have been so worried. You shouldn't have to think about complicated financial things during your grief." I could have corrected them right then. Could have pulled out the documents showing I was managing 7 figures in assets, that I'd successfully handled 3 major business decisions since Richard's passing, that our financial advisor had literally complimented me on my grasp of our portfolio. But something stopped me. Some instinct told me to stay quiet, to observe, to see where this was going. "Let me think about it," I said instead. Over the next few months, I watched. I paid attention. And what I saw broke my heart in ways even Richard's death hadn't. Brandon and Tiffany started treating me like I was charity. They'd come over for Sunday dinners, which I still cooked from scratch, and they'd bring me things. A $20 grocery store gift card, a box of generic tea bags, used paperback books from their garage sale pile, things you'd give to someone who couldn't afford their own. Once, Tiffany brought me a half-used bottle of lotion from her bathroom. "I thought you could use this," she'd said with this sympathetic smile, like she was doing me some enormous favor. I'd spend hours preparing pot roast, homemade rolls, fresh vegetables from my garden, desserts from scratch, real food, the kind that takes time and skill. They'd show up, eat until they were stuffed, then leave me with these token gifts like I was some struggling single mother they were sponsoring for the holidays. Never once did they ask if I needed help with yard work, or offer to fix the fence gate that had been sticking, or do any of the actual helpful things family does for each other. Just these performative gestures that made them feel good about themselves. The real knife came when Tiffany started talking to her friends about me. I overheard her on my back patio one Sunday, phone pressed to her ear, voice just loud enough to carry through the screen door. It's so sad, really. Richard left her basically nothing. We've been helping out where we can, but Brandon's business has been slow. We can't support her and ourselves, you know? She's probably going to have to sell the house soon. I remember standing at my kitchen sink, hands in dishwater, listening to her lie so effortlessly about my life. This house was paid off, had been for 15 years. I had more equity in real estate alone than they'd probably see in their lifetime. But there she was, spinning this tragic tale about poor Carol who'd be homeless soon. What made it worse was how it escalated. In August, I heard Tiffany on the phone again, this time talking to her sister. We might have to have her move in with us eventually. Nina, can you imagine? Brandon's not thrilled about it, but what choice do we have? She's family. The way she said family made it sound like a burden, like an obligation she was nobly accepting. I never confronted them. Some part of me needed to see how deep this went, how long they'd maintain this fiction, how comfortable they'd become living off my money while pitying me for not having any. Every word was a lie. Richard had left me everything, and it was substantial. But I said nothing. I played along. Why? Because I wanted to see the truth. I wanted to see who my son and his wife really were when they thought I had nothing. The invitations stopped coming. Brandon's birthday dinner? Let's keep it small this year, Mom. Just us and Tiffany's parents. You understand? Thanksgiving? We're going to Tiffany's family's place. It's easier since they have the bigger house. They didn't invite me to that either. When I did see them, the conversation was always the same. How was I managing? Was I keeping up with the bills? Did I need anything? All with these pitying looks, like I was some tragic figure barely scraping by. Meanwhile, I watched their social media, watched them book a 10-day vacation to Turks and Caicos, watched Brandon buy a brand new Audi, watched Tiffany post about her shopping sprees, her spa days, her wine tastings at expensive Scottsdale restaurants, all while bringing me dollar store greeting cards and acting like they were my saviors. But I still didn't tell them the truth. I had this feeling in my gut that I needed to wait to see how far this would go, and I'm so glad I trusted that instinct. December rolled around. Brandon called me on a Tuesday evening. Mom, Tiffany and I are doing our Christmas shopping this Saturday at the Kierland Commons. We thought maybe you'd like to come along, get out of the house, do some window shopping. Window shopping? Because they assumed I couldn't actually buy anything. That sounds lovely, I told him. I'd enjoy that. Saturday arrived cold and bright. Arizona winters aren't like northern winters, but we get our chilly days. I dressed simply. Black pants, a plain sweater, comfortable shoes. I'd learned over these months that anything too nice made them ask suspicious questions. They picked me up in Brandon's new Audi, and I slid into the back seat. Tiffany was in front looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Designer everything. Her purse alone probably cost $3,000. "We're so glad you could join us, Carol," she said, checking her makeup in the mirror. "This will be fun." The mall was packed. Families everywhere, Christmas music, decorated windows, the whole festive atmosphere. We walked together at first, going into different stores, but I noticed something quickly. Every time I'd pick something up to look at it, show any interest in actually purchasing something, Tiffany would steer me away. "Oh, that's probably not your style, Carol. That's nice, but maybe too expensive. Let's just look, shall we?" They were making sure I understood I was there to watch, not to participate. We ended up at Nordstrom. Tiffany's eyes lit up like a kid in a candy store. She made a beeline for the designer section, Brandon trailing behind her. I followed at a distance, watching them select items like they were preparing for royalty. Cashmere sweaters, leather jackets, premium denim, handbags that cost more than some people's monthly rent. She held up a designer purse, rotating it to catch the light. "Brandon, look at this one. It's perfect." The price tag dangled from it. $2,200 for a purse. She didn't even blink at the price, just tossed it into her cart like it was a clearance item. "Whatever you want, babe," Brandon said, not even looking at the price. Easy to be generous when you think it's your money and you have no idea where it's actually coming from. Brandon was in the men's section, loading his arms with designer shirts and watches. I watched the price tags fly by. $150, $300, $500. The numbers climbed and climbed. He picked up a leather jacket, tried it on in front of the mirror, turned to Tiffany for approval. "What do you think?" "Gorgeous," she purred. "You deserve it. You work so hard." I wanted to laugh. Brandon's consulting business consisted of sporadic phone calls and maybe one actual client every 3 months. The rest of his time was spent at the golf course or day trading on his phone with money I was providing. But sure, he worked so hard. Then Tiffany's mother showed up. Linda. I'd never particularly cared for Linda, and the feeling had always been mutual. She was one of those women who believed her daughter could do no wrong and that her daughter had married beneath her when she chose Brandon. She spotted us and came sweeping over, air kisses for Tiffany, a brief nod for Brandon, and barely a glance at me, like I was invisible, like I was furniture. "Christmas shopping?" Linda said, eyeing Tiffany's growing pile of merchandise. "How wonderful. You deserve it, darling. You work so hard." Tiffany worked as a part-time yoga instructor, 3 classes a week. But sure, she worked so hard. They started talking, and I drifted toward a display of scarves, trying to give them space, trying to be invisible since that's clearly what they wanted. I was examining a beautiful silk one, deep blue with silver threading, when I heard it. Tiffany's voice, not quite a whisper, but low enough she thought I wouldn't hear. "We should probably wrap this up soon. Brandon's been swiping the card a lot today." Linda's response was louder. She had one of those carrying voices, the kind that projects without the speaker realizing it. "Well, you two deserve nice things. It's not like you can ask her to pitch in." A pause, and I could feel the gesture even without looking, the dismissive hand wave in my direction. The woman's basically penniless. The word hung in the air. Penniless. Like I was some Dickens character, some tragic widow in rags. The scarf in my hands suddenly felt heavy. Tiffany giggled, actually giggled. The sound cut through me like glass. I know, it's sad, really. Richard must not have left much. We've been covering her where we can, but it's getting expensive. The Sunday dinners alone. She makes this big production, but we're the ones who have to bring her groceries half the time. A lie. An absolute lie. I'd never asked them for a single grocery item. They brought those sad little gift cards on their own to make themselves feel charitable. Another voice joined in. I turned slightly and saw that Tiffany's sister Jessica had appeared. Jessica, who'd always been competitive with Tiffany, who'd always looked down on me because I'd come from a middle-class background before marrying Richard. "Wait, so you're paying for Carol's expenses?" Jessica said, loud enough that other shoppers glanced over. She wasn't even trying to be discreet. "That's generous of you, sis. She's lucky to have you. Most people wouldn't take on that kind of burden." Burden. There was that word again. "We do what we can," Tiffany said, her voice taking on this martyr-like quality. "Family is family, right? Even when they can't contribute anything themselves. I mean, what else can we do? We can't just abandon her." They laughed, all 3 of them. Standing 20 feet away from me in a crowded department store during Christmas season, laughing about how I couldn't contribute, about how I was basically penniless, about what a burden I was to them. Other shoppers were walking by, probably catching pieces of their conversation, probably looking at me with pity, the poor old woman whose family had to support her. Brandon said nothing. My son, my only child, The baby I'd carried and birthed and raised stood there silent while his wife and her family mocked his mother in the middle of a department store during Christmas shopping. He didn't defend me. He didn't correct them. He just stood there examining a watch, pretending not to hear, letting it happen. Something inside me, something that had been bending and bending for 6 months, finally snapped. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, the same app I'd been using to quietly manage our entire financial life while they played pretend benefactors. And I saw exactly what I expected to see. Brandon's checking account, the one he thought was his alone, showed 6 transactions from today. Nordstrom, Nordstrom, Nordstrom. Every purchase, every swipe, all showing up in real time. What Brandon didn't know was that his personal account had been set up by Richard years ago as a sub-account of our main business account. It was technically a business expense account for when Brandon worked with his father's company. Brandon had kept using it after Richard died, and I'd never said a word. I'd been adding money to it monthly, enough to cover his lifestyle. Every vacation, every car payment, every shopping spree, all funded by the money he thought I didn't have. Tiffany's credit card, also connected to my accounts. A card Richard had set up for family expenses, which she'd been using like her personal unlimited shopping fund. Every charge came through the system I controlled. They thought they were being generous, helping out poor penniless Carol. They had no idea that every dollar they were spending, every single transaction, was money I was providing. My hands were steady as I navigated to the account management screen. 6 months of watching them, 6 months of being treated like charity, 6 months of their pity and condescension and lies. It all came down to this moment. I found Brandon's account, selected Freeze account. The app asked me to confirm. I tapped yes. Then Tiffany's card. Freeze card. Confirm. Yes, both accounts, frozen, locked, inaccessible, just like that. I looked up. They were still shopping, still piling items into their carts. Tiffany had moved to shoes now. Brandon was looking at leather bags. Neither of them had any idea what was coming. I walked slowly toward the front of the store, positioned myself near the exit where I could watch, and I waited. If you're enjoying this story and you want to hear more accounts of people getting exactly what they deserve, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happened next was beautiful. Brandon approached the checkout first. His cart was overflowing. Dress shirts, a leather jacket, designer jeans, 2 watches, cologne, a cashmere scarf. The young cashier smiled and started scanning. The total climbed fast. $800, $900, $1,000, $1,200. Card? She asked. Brandon handed it over confidently. She swiped it. The machine beeped. She frowned and swiped again. Another beep. I'm sorry, sir. This card is being declined. Brandon's face went confused. That's impossible. Try it again. She tried 3 more times. Each time, declined. Maybe you have another card? She suggested gently. He pulled out his wallet, but I knew what he'd find. That was his main card. His backup was a card he barely used with maybe a $1,000 limit, and he'd maxed that out during their vacation to Turks and Caicos. At the register next to him, Tiffany was having the exact same problem. Her cart was even bigger than Brandon's. $847 worth of merchandise. The cashier ran her card once, twice, 3 times. Declined, declined, declined. What is happening? Tiffany's voice was rising. This card was working fine 20 minutes ago. Other shoppers were starting to stare. The cashiers were calling for managers. Brandon was on his phone, frantically trying to check his bank app, but frozen accounts don't show up properly on mobile. It just looks like an error. Linda rushed over. What's wrong? Both of our cards are being declined, Tiffany said, her voice getting shrill. This doesn't make any sense. Well, don't you have cash? Linda asked. The look on Tiffany's face was priceless. Cash? Who carries cash anymore? Certainly not someone who thought they had unlimited access to what they believed was their husband's money. Brandon was talking to someone on the phone now, probably the bank's automated system. I could see the frustration building on his face as he navigated through menus, getting nowhere. A manager appeared, professional and apologetic. "Folks, I'm sorry, but if the payment isn't going through, we'll need to void these transactions and have you step aside so we can help other customers." "This is ridiculous," Tiffany snapped. "I shop here all the time. This card has always worked." But the policies were clear. No payment, no merchandise. The cashiers began the long process of voiding out hundreds of dollars worth of items. Every scan was a little victory, every returned item a small piece of justice. Linda tried her card. "I'll cover it," she announced grandly, but her card only had a $3,000 limit, and between both cards they were over $2,000. She could only cover part of it, and Tiffany refused to be embarrassed by choosing which items to keep. "Forget it," Tiffany said, her face red. "We'll figure out what's wrong with the accounts and come back." They abandoned their carts right there at the register, two enormous piles of expensive merchandise that employees would have to return to the floor. Brandon was still on his phone, still trying to figure out what had happened. Tiffany was near tears, her perfect shopping day ruined. And I stood by the exit, my phone in my hand, watching it all unfold. They didn't see me at first. They were too busy being humiliated, too focused on their frozen accounts and declined cards, too absorbed in their public embarrassment. But as they walked toward the exit, heads down, avoiding the stares of other shoppers, Linda spotted me. "Carol, did you see that? Some kind of technical glitch froze Brandon's accounts. Can you believe it? Right before Christmas." Her voice was indignant, like the universe itself had personally wronged her daughter. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Then at Tiffany, with her tear-streaked makeup running down her face. Then at Brandon, my son, who'd let his wife mock his mother in public, who was still frantically jabbing at his phone screen trying to figure out what had happened. "It wasn't a glitch," I said quietly. 3 faces turned to me, confused. The noise of the mall seemed to fade away. Christmas music playing somewhere in the distance, people walking past with their successful purchases, and us, frozen in this moment of truth. "I'm sorry," Tiffany said, her voice sharp with confusion and barely contained hysteria. "What did you say?" I held up my phone, the banking app still open on the screen. "I said it wasn't a glitch. I froze the accounts, both of them, every card you tried to use. I shut them down myself, standing right here while you were shopping." The silence that followed was deafening. Even with the Christmas music playing, even with the noise of the crowded mall, even with people rushing past us with their bags and packages, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. I watched understanding dawn on their faces slowly, like sunrise breaking over a landscape. First confusion, then disbelief, then the horrible, creeping realization. Brandon found his voice first. "What are you talking about?" But his face told me he was starting to understand, starting to piece it together. The account that always had money, the card that never declined. Where did he think it was all coming from? "Your account," I said, looking directly at him, making sure he heard every word. "The one you've been using to fund your lifestyle, your vacations, your new car, your wife's shopping addiction. It's not your account, Brandon. It's mine. It's always been mine. It's a sub-account under the business holdings your father left to me. Every dollar you've spent in the last 6 months has been money I've been depositing there. Every vacation to Turks and Caicos, every car payment on that Audi, every dinner at those expensive Scottsdale restaurants, every single dollar came from me." His face went from pale to white, the color draining so fast I thought he might faint. "That's impossible. Dad set up that account for me." "He did," I confirmed, "as a business expense account when you worked with him. It was always tied to the main business accounts that became mine when he died. Accounts I've been managing perfectly well, thank you very much. I've been adding money to your account every single month. Enough to cover your mortgage, your car, all your expenses. I kept you afloat while you played at having a consulting business." I turned to Tiffany. Her mascara had created dark trails down her cheeks, and she looked like she was going to be sick. "And your credit card? also mine. A family expenses card that's connected to my accounts. Every charge you've made, every spa day, every brunch with the girls, every yoga outfit, every overpriced handbag, all of it paid for by the woman you just called basically penniless in the middle of Nordstrom, in public, where strangers could hear you. Tiffany's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No words came out. For once in her life, she was speechless. "You froze our accounts?" Brandon's voice was barely a whisper, but I could hear the panic underneath it, the dawning realization of what this meant. "Mom, we need those to live on. We have bills. We have a mortgage payment due next week. You have bills?" I interrupted, and I could feel my voice getting stronger, more powerful with every word. 6 months of holding this in, 6 months of watching and waiting and being humiliated. It was all coming out now. "Tell me, Brandon, when was the last time you actually earned enough from your consulting business to cover your lifestyle, your mortgage, your car payment, your wife's spending habits? When was the last time you actually supported yourself?" He said nothing. He couldn't, because the answer was never. Or at least not since his father had died, maybe not even before that. "I'll tell you," I continued, my voice steady and calm despite the rage I felt burning underneath. "You haven't. Not since your father died. Maybe not even before that. Richard was subsidizing your life, and when he passed, I continued doing it. I kept depositing money into your account every month. $15,000 a month, Brandon. That's what I've been giving you. I made sure you never had to worry. I made sure you could live your comfortable life. And how did you repay that generosity?" I looked at each of them in turn. Brandon, who couldn't meet my eyes. Tiffany, who was shaking. Linda, who looked like she'd been slapped. Jessica, who'd backed up several steps and was clearly wishing she'd never come shopping today. "By treating me like charity," I said, and my voice broke just slightly on that word. "By pitying me. By bringing me used books and dollar store tea and acting like you were my saviors. By lying to your friends about how you were helping poor Carol when every single dollar you were spending was coming from me. By excluding me from holidays. By talking about me like I was a burden you were nobly bearing. By calling me penniless in a department store where anyone could hear." Linda tried to interject. "Now, Carol, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I said, my voice sharp, "is the one where you all thought I was helpless, where you assumed that because Richard died, I must be broke, where you decided I was too old, too stupid, or too grief-stricken to manage my own affairs." I pulled up my banking app and turned the screen toward them. The account balance was visible. 7 figures. More money than they'd probably imagined. "That's just one account," I said. "I have investments, properties, business holdings. Your father made sure I was educated in every aspect of our finances. He made me his equal partner years before he died. I've been managing everything perfectly well. I just wanted to see what kind of people you really were when you thought I had nothing." Brandon looked like he might be sick. "Mom, I didn't mean... We were trying to help." "By calling me penniless? By laughing about me in public? By excluding me from holidays? By bringing me dollar store gifts while you took $1,000 vacations on my money?" My voice was steady, calm. I'd been waiting months to say these words. "That's not help, Brandon. That's cruelty." Tiffany found her voice, and it came out defensive. "Well, you should have told us. You let us think." "I let you show me who you really are," I said. "And you did. Thank you for that clarity." Jessica, who'd been silent this whole time, tried to slink away. I noticed. "Oh, and Jessica, the next time you want to laugh about someone being penniless, make sure they're not the one funding your sister's lifestyle. It's a bad look." I put my phone back in my purse. "The accounts will stay frozen. If you need money, Brandon, you're welcome to earn it like everyone else. I'll continue to pay for essentials if you ask me respectfully and honestly. But the free ride on my silent generosity, that's done." I started walking toward the exit. Linda tried one more time. Carol, you're being unreasonable. They're family. I turned back. Family doesn't mock each other in department stores. Family doesn't lie about helping when they're actually being helped. Family doesn't exclude and belittle and condescend. You want to know what family is, Linda? It's not what your daughter has been demonstrating. I walked out of Nordstrom with my head high. Behind me, I could hear Tiffany starting to cry. Brandon trying to explain something to his mother-in-law. People whispering and staring. I didn't care. For 6 months, I'd been made to feel small, unnecessary, pitied. In 5 minutes, I'd reclaimed every ounce of dignity they'd tried to take from me. I called an Uber to take me home. I didn't need a ride from them. I didn't need anything from them. That evening, Brandon called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. On the third call, I answered. Mom, please, we need to talk about this. Do we? I asked. The accounts. Mom, we have bills due. The mortgage is coming up and the car payment and you have a job, I said. Or you're supposed to. Maybe it's time you actually worked instead of living off your dead father's money and your mother's charity. That's not fair, he said, and I could hear Tiffany in the background coaching him on what to say. We didn't know. You should have told us. I'll tell you what's not fair, Brandon, I said. What's not fair is a mother being excluded from holidays. What's not fair is being mocked for being penniless while you spend her money. What's not fair is watching your son stand silent while his wife and her family humiliate the woman who gave him life. Silence on the other end. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to sit down with Tiffany and have a very serious conversation about who you both are as people. You're going to think about how you treated me these last 6 months, and when you're ready to apologize, really apologize, not just say sorry because you want the money turned back on, you can call me. Until then, the accounts stay frozen. Mom, goodbye, Brandon. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it felt good. For the first time since Richard died, I felt powerful. I felt seen. Not as poor Carol, not as helpless Carol, but as Carol who was in charge of her own life and wouldn't be disrespected in her own family. 3 days later, Brandon showed up at my door, alone. No Tiffany, no prepared speech, just my son looking exhausted and ashamed. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside and let him enter. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where he and Tiffany had first suggested I couldn't manage on my own. I'm sorry, he said. And then, to his credit, he started to cry. Real tears, not manipulative ones. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. Dad dies, and instead of being there for you, I let Tiffany convince me you needed us, that you couldn't cope. And when you didn't correct us, I thought we were right. You thought I was weak, I said. Yes, he admitted. And I'm ashamed of that. I'm ashamed I didn't know you better. I'm ashamed I stood there while Tiffany and her mother talked about you like that. I'm ashamed of all of it. I let him sit with that shame for a moment. Then I asked, what are you going to do about it? I'm going back to work, real work. I've contacted 3 of Dad's old business partners about consulting opportunities. I told Tiffany we're going on a budget, a real one, and if she can't handle it, then we have bigger problems than money. He looked at me with red eyes. I want to earn your respect back, however long that takes. I reached across the table and took his hand. That's all I wanted to hear. The account stayed frozen for another month. Brandon did get consulting work. He did put them on a budget. Tiffany got a full-time job at a fitness center. I'm not sure if they'll make it as a couple, but that's not my problem to solve. I unfroze the accounts eventually, but I changed them. Instead of unlimited access, there's now a monthly transfer. Generous, but finite. Enough to help, not enough to enable. Brandon knows that if the disrespect returns, I can shut it all down again. As for me, I'm living my life. I joined a book club. I'm taking art classes. I'm planning that Alaska trip Richard and I talked about. I'm not anyone's charity case. I'm not anyone's burden. I'm Carol, and I control my own life. Christmas came and went. Brandon and Tiffany invited me for dinner. It was awkward, but it was honest. No more pretending, no more lies. Just a family trying to figure out how to be family again. And every time I open my banking app, every time I see those accounts that I control, I remember that moment in Nordstrom. I remember the look on their faces when they realized the truth. I remember reclaiming my power, my dignity, my respect. That's my story. The day I went Christmas shopping and taught my family that you should never underestimate the woman who controls the accounts. Thanks for listening.